I'm going to call to order the what is today? April 17th meeting. Wow. Don't make me do that again. Call to order the April 17th Port of Bellingham Commissioners meeting. Commissioner Briscoe.
Here.
Commissioner Shepard.
Here.
And Commissioner Bell is here. So, yeah, barely. So we like to start the meetings with a little public comment. We allocate 15 minutes for this. Anyone wishing to speak before the commission?
We don't have anyone currently signed up.
Anybody just want to pontificate for? I should not do that. All right, hearing none. We'll move on to the consent agenda.
A motion to approve consent agenda items A through D.
Gentlemen, are you fine with the consent agenda?
Yeah, I've got a question on item B. Does this, tell me how this relates. I know there's a new regulation coming up for boating that prohibits any discharge of sewage into navigable waters in the Puget Sound, Salish Sea. Is this initiative here in line with that mandate that's coming down from ecology, or has this been a long-term project that has been bubbling along?
Hi, my name's Andy Peterson. I'm the harbor master at Blaine Harbor. And yes, this is a project that we've been working on for some time, and it will support the new no discharge zone requirement in Puget Sound.
Okay. So when people are asking us about facilities to do their pumping, we can let them know we're going to have some brand new facilities at Blaine Harbor, and tell me about the facilities we have to support them at Squalicum.
Sure, we've got approximately 12 pump-out stations located throughout Squalicum Harbor currently. Blaine currently has 3 pump-out stations, and these will augment those and help support the effort to get the sewage pumped up shore.
Okay. What I understand is both treated and untreated discharges will not be allowed anymore.
I believe the no discharge zone right now is focusing on black water, which is boat sewage. Gray water is still permissible as long as it meets a certain standard and doesn't leave a sheen.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you.
Anything else on the consent agenda?
I just might add that it's been a no discharge zone ever since I can remember. So this isn't really new. They just dusted off some paperwork. You haven't been able to dump sewage in Puget Sound inside of 12 miles from our coast of Washington for 20 years or better.
Both treated and non-treated?
Is that all?
That's it.
Shall we vote on the consent agenda? Mr. Shepard?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, we have a presentation to start the day. Let's start with the Sea to Ski. Tiffany?
Tiffany D. Simone, Meetings and Events Supervisor, and I'm just here to introduce Anna Rankin, who's the race director for Ski to Sea, amongst a couple other ones. Most of you know Meetings and Events handles the private event rentals, 545 over the year, and a whole host of community events where we hope to draw Whatcom County residents and beyond down to our waterfront. So, Anna Rankin from Whatcom Events.
Thanks for having me again this year. I just wanted to come and extend my appreciation to the Port of Bellingham for the properties that you provide us with for Ski to Sea, Swanage Point Park and Marine Park for the race. It is essential to the race that we have these properties not only to illustrate the beauty of Bellingham and Whatcom County, but to make the race happen. I especially want to thank the maintenance crew that does such a stellar job every year of preparing the grounds, repairing them, managing them. They do a terrific job both for Ski to Sea and just year-round. The race this year, we have a new rule that we instated. Previously with Ski to Sea, racers were just allowed to do one leg. So 8 racers per team. This year we decided to open that up a little bit and allow racers to do multiple legs. This is in hopes of getting more people to participate. Someone can do up to 3 legs of the race this year. And what we're seeing more is, instead of people doing a 3 or 4 person team, is just we're seeing our registration numbers go up significantly. We have 30 teams more today than we did last year on this day. We're almost at 300 paid teams. We try to get 400, but 350 is a nice number. So this allows someone, if they have an injury on the team or just one spot that they can't fill, another team member is able to do a leg. So we're seeing a lot of people on the mountain doing a ski leg and then coming down the mountain doing a cyclocross leg or doing the kayak leg. So we are continuing to hope that this is really going to help with our registration numbers to come. Our main sponsors for the event, People's Bank, our title sponsor, and then our gold level sponsors returning this year, Mount Baker Ski Area, Peace Health, Fred Meyer, and backcountry.com, as well as the support of the City of Bellingham, Whatcom County, and the Port. The community is so involved in this event. You know, most people have some story to tell about Ski to Sea, whether they've done it, whether they've volunteered. We have lots of local businesses that participate in the way of giving raffles to our volunteer appreciation barbecue. We use about 800 to 900 volunteers for Ski to Sea, and every year I'm in awe that we can get that many people outside of people racing, people going out of town. So we do a barbecue at Blodell Donovan every year to show our appreciation to those volunteers. We get a lot of local church groups, organizations, coworkers. I left some brochures on the back if anyone's interested in finding out how their company or corporation can get more involved with the race through sponsorship or volunteering. And you know, we recognize that Ski to Sea is more than just the race. It's 2 weeks of events happening, starting with the Junior Ski to Sea, which will be moving to Zwanich this year for the year, and the Junior Ski to Sea Parade, the Blossom Time Parade, which is slated to continue, and the race, as well as things like the sale at the library and just the whole community getting together to celebrate Ski to Sea and sort of kicking off the summer, bringing tourism into both Bellingham and Whatcom County. And lastly, I just wanted to invite you all and make it known the events that we particularly are putting on around Ski to Sea. We have our sponsor appreciation dinner that I hope you all got an invite for at the upfront that we do every year, just to get together and kind of have some fun before we start the race. And then the volunteer barbecue at Blodell Donovan, as I mentioned, on the 20th from 3 to 5 p.m. And then the Boundary Bay Block Party, which is definitely the start of summer there, is Friday the 25th. And the race this year, Memorial Weekend, Sunday, May 27th. So we hope that everyone will be involved in one way or another. And thanks again for the use of the properties. And to Tiffany specifically, she's been great to work with all the years that I've put on the race. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
As supposedly the economic leaders of the county to help things grow, is there anything we can do to help facilitate this any better than we are doing?
You know, year before last, we had a real low year where it looked like we were maybe going to, you know, as a nonprofit, we have a rainy day fund set aside. When we have to dig into that, at some point when there aren't funds there, there's nowhere to get those funds from. And the community really came together. We got some additional sponsorship, things like the city helping with our law enforcement bill, you providing those properties for us. Those all are the things that are contributing to the success of the race, which last year we did much better. And so I can't think of anything that you can provide that you're not already providing us.
Well, if you do, please feel free to ask.
Thank you. I really appreciate the partnership. Any more questions?
Do you have a sense of the breakup of teams that come from Whatcom County and teams that come from outside of Whatcom County?
Yeah, we do. We receive a tourism grant from Whatcom County and the city, so this is information that we compile every year. And about 40% of people come from Whatcom County. It's quite a small percentage of people from out of the U.S., for instance, most coming from Canada. That's only about 4%. And about 67% of people are in Washington State, and a little over 40% from Whatcom County. A lot of Skagit County, a lot of island counties, but we really put our marketing efforts into Seattle, Portland, Spokane, Bend. And every year, we get a few participants from California, East Coast, different states, but definitely most participants from Whatcom County. The interesting fact about Ski to Sea is every year, approximately 55% of people that do the race have never done it before. So although it's been happening for 46 years, and we have people that have participated over 40 of those 46 years, we're seeing new people every year get involved. Yeah. Yeah, there's someone that I spoke to the other day that's only missed 2 years of the 45 so far, yeah.
Wow, good for them.
Yeah. So local support, but we're trying to get more, national coverage all the time to bring people from out of the area.
Yeah, well, it's certainly one of those signature events. Not every place can claim the ability to put on a race like this, so it's one of those unique things that we have here to really showcase.
I mean, I'm just amazed when I go to other cities to market the event that I can describe to people that we live in a place where we have 93 miles from the mountain to the bay, where we can do this seamlessly and incorporate all 7 of the sports. I don't think there's many states that can say that. Anyone else? Well, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to our financial update.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Tamara Sobczak, Director of Finance. So this is the first quarter report. It is much like the year-end report I presented a month or so ago, but obviously much more concise. It's just the first 3 months. So to get us in the mood to talk about numbers, what do you call a number that can't keep still? All right, you'll have to pay attention because the answer is coming later. In the meantime, let's look at our balance sheet. At the end of March, we had total assets of $389 million compared to the end of December of $391 million. That's a decrease of just over $2 million. But more importantly, look at the total liabilities, second line from the bottom. Our total liabilities decreased about $4 million. So when your liabilities decrease faster than your assets, that's a strengthening balance sheet. Net assets ending at $248 million compared to $246 3 months prior. Where are our investments? We have about $15.5 million in federal securities. These we just keep enough in these longer-term securities to cover our reserves, our bond reserves, our emergency reserves. And we're seeing an average yield right now of just under 1.4%. The rest of our investments are held in the local government investment pool, just under $23 million at an earnings rate of 1.6%. So port-wide revenues. First quarter 2018, we brought in almost $9.5 million, almost $6 million of that from operating, and recall that's airports, marinas, marine terminals, excuse me, and real estate. Compared to a year ago, this same time frame, just under $8 million. So revenues increased pretty significantly year over year. And we'll go into more detail in a minute. First quarter expenses came in at about $8 million compared to the same time frame last year, $8.1 million. So similar expenses, more revenues, explains why the balance sheet got a little stronger.
And why you're grinning more.
It's much easier to deliver this news. All right, looking at the details, aviation division. So what you're looking at here, the green columns are the first 3 months of this year. The yellow column is what we budgeted for the first 3 months of this year. And then the blue column is the same time frame in 2017. And Commissioner Shepherd, I know that you asked for a forecast. First 3 months, our best forecast is our budget. But we'll add those columns in the later presentations for you. So aviation revenues, very similar to last year and pretty much right on budget. Expenses are lower than budget and lower than prior year. Be cautiously optimistic about this. It's mainly the maintenance and repairs expenses, and those can fluctuate pretty wildly month over month. Looking at the marinas,
So I noticed, can I go back to that? Most of the.
you bet.
I noticed we had a pretty significant decrease in parking revenue. Are we still expecting that to be the case? Or
You
did I
know, we
misread
seem
that?
to be leveling off. We have employments, we have new tariff schedules, so we're kind of mitigating that with other items.
I would suspect that that's going to be an ongoing concern, though, as Uber and Lyft become more commonplace. People find other ways to get to the airport. I think the revenue per passenger in the parking will continue to decline.
Looking at the marinas, 1.6 million in revenue compared to 1.4 budget. A little higher than last year, a little higher than we expected. Expenses for this division is also very predictable, but like the airport, M&R is low at this stage. And I looked at the marinas revenues, and it's really both harbors, the pleasure moorage is up. So that's encouraging, and we'll see if that trend continues throughout the year. This is the cruise terminal. The commission asked for the marine terminals to be separated. So this is just looking at the cruise terminal alone, not including the shipping terminal. Revenues at $400,000 to expense at $209,000. This is also pretty predictable as long as those sailings continue as scheduled. The shipping terminal, well, this is our wild card. We just received most of the heavy equipment, so we're staged and ready for cargo. We're receiving storage revenues, but not really those handling and service fees yet. So we'll have to keep an eye on this. The real estate, high occupancy, revenues remain very steady, 1.7 revenues to 1.7 budget. You can't get any better than that. Expenses almost exactly the same level as last year, a little lower than what we budgeted. Overhead costs came in just under $1 million for expenses to a budget of $800,000 compared to $800,000 same time last year. I'm not alarmed by this. A lot of costs like annual subscriptions, annual dues, sometimes they come in March, sometimes they come in April. So it'll level out by the end of the year. Public priorities, so this includes the waterfront district that we've included in the public priorities, as well as economic development and all the open space and commission costs. Revenue is mainly the event rentals as well as that F Street warehouse. And then the expenses, you can see that we budgeted quite a bit of expenses that we're not realizing. This is the economic development division that we've really ramped up, but we're getting fully staffed and getting that division going. So we'll track that throughout the year as well. So that's all for the financial piece. Is there any questions so far? You want the answer?
Sure.
A Roman numeral. Collective ground, yeah, of course. All right, we should move on. So at the end of the year, I always highlight capital projects that we've completed, showing what we've done. But this time of year, I like to show what's in front of us, what we've started. So in progress, I'm not going to go through all of these. I just wanted to give you a snapshot of what we've started that we're expecting to complete this year. This is just the major projects. We've got stormwater and surface repairs at the shipping terminal, airport work, waterfront work. We've got cleanup action at the shipyard terminal that we're expecting to finish this year. And then in the spring, we're going to start just a variety of new projects. In this building, we have some public facilities that need rehabbing, more waterfront work, C Street Terminal, the ASDL deplaning hall, that's when you get off the airplane, walking through to baggage claim, that's going to be automated. We've got fire system replacements, HVAC work, railroad crossings. We're expecting to complete the, wrong slide. Let me just go. And then in summer and fall starts, we just have a variety of projects, HVACs, lighting. And we're expecting to begin the web house construction and have that done by the end of the year. Bulkhead repairs at Blaine, We'll reseal the Bellwether, Bayview, and Fairhaven Station buildings as well. So that's a snapshot of what we have going on the capital front.
Is there any capital cost in the new building going in on Bellwether? Do we have any say in that, or is all of that going to be borne by the?
It's all private sector. In fact, they've actually already paid their lease with us. It's a 75-year lease or something like that, and they've prepaid it. So, yeah, there's no financial implications to us whatsoever.
It's fun to see that go.
Okay, so moving on to the non-financial updates. Risk management activities, we had one major incident that was reported. It actually happened a year ago. There was a slip and fall at the Fairhaven shipyard, and the port was just notified that we were named as a party to it. Yeah, go ahead.
So Commissioners, that's a situation where real estate staff requires an also insured certificate from the tenant's insurance company. So that tenant's insurance company has accepted the defense of the port and appointed defense counsel. That's Travelers Insurance. So they've accepted defense of the port, appointed an insurance defense counsel for the port. So that's not going to be a claim that's going to go against the port's insurance. It's going to go against the same insurance company that's also defending the tenant, and they appoint two separate adjusters. So they appoint two adjusters, and they kind of run two parallel defenses. It's a good job for property staff getting all the certificates, making sure it was all in order.
Thank you, Frank.
Thanks. So open claims for the port, we just have the one claim that we've talked about before, the damage to the mooring dolphin at the shipping terminal, and that's still open. And then open claims against the port, there's three. There's one we just talked about at the Fairhaven shipyard. There was a slip and fall on the trail to the beach down at the end of Cornwall. And then we had somebody slip and fall on the Sawtooth dock in Blaine. And all of those are being handled by legal and our insurance.
People can't walk or what?
Let me add a couple of things. So when the port makes its properties open for the recreational use of the public without a fee, the port or any public agency is not responsible for injuries unless it was a known latent defect. Latent meaning it can't be readily seen by the average person. The kind of seminal case in Washington is a city down south, someplace, name escapes me, that cut off all the timber in a lake right at the water level, old trees. Somebody's water skiing by and hit the tree stump and was injured. So the one on the beach is, I'm not sure if the port even owns the property or DNR does, but it was open to the public. It was a trail. You could see the hole. The other one, there was some ice. Apparently you could see the ice, and so both of those have been, those claims have been denied, basically.
I'm assuming most of these are ice claims and boats that they're claimed in.
The slip and fall at the Fairhaven shipyards was in a parking lot on an icy, snowy day. The slip and fall at Cornwall was a beach trail with a hole caused by the sand, by the waves and the sand. And the slip and fall on the Sawtooth dock was a person walking on the dock, and there was an isolated spot of ice, apparently. The rest of the dock wasn't icy, so those are the three claims.
I'm glad I'm not a lawyer. Yeah. All right, Stormwater Program.
I hear they have better jokes.
Probably.
Just a rumor.
Yeah. Oh, dear. Okay. Can we get through this? All right, so we have two industrial stormwater permits, one at the airport, one at the shipping terminal. Both are in compliance, including training and record keeping. The airport sample results were within permit limits. However, at the shipping terminal, we took two samples along the pier, and they exceeded the benchmark for copper. So we are submitting our required responses by the end of August. And then talking about employee safety, so there's been a concerted effort to increase employee safety over the past several years. And I wanted to show this chart. In 2006, we had 8 injuries. In 2008, 7, 09, 11 injuries. That's a lot when we have, 100 employees or so. So we've really made a big effort on employee safety, employee training. I just wanted to show the trend line is going down. We only had 1 recordable injury this year. I'm hoping that this chart stays the same all year, and that'll be the only one. And then finally, the public records request. We had 138 records requests in 2017, and we've had 40 this year so far. Last time I was up here, the commission asked a few questions. You asked did we have regular requesters, like serial requesters? In 2018, really only one, and that was TSA requests our CCTV footage, and that's just an ongoing request. But no other real serial requesters. There's just a variety of requests. Another question was asked, what's the category most often requested? And it still continues to be bid documents. There were only 6, but that really is the biggest requester. All of them are just so different. And then the largest requests, and we had 4 what we consider large requests, taking up some extra staff time. One of them was all construction contracts that were related to a federally funded project. One was any and all documents related to a settlement agreement. One was all records associated with in-water work conducted within the Squalicum Inner Harbor. And you can see all records. These are big requests. And then the last one were all meeting minutes mentioning any discussion, naming of pose point or post point. So those were our 4 large requests.
It's been a general decrease in the number of requests coming through. And then can we attribute the spike in 17 to it being an election year? Would that be your take?
That would be my take.
Oh, that was you that made those.
I wouldn't even know how.
We're also working toward getting some documents on our website that the public can just go and get themselves, so they don't have to request it. That's a work in progress, so we'll really see a drop.
Yeah.
But if I heard you correctly, you said the bulk of these are bid documents and that kind of type of information?
Well, 6 of the 40 are, but everything else is just singular requests, so.
A lot of that takes up the most time, though, is the documents that they request for bids?
That doesn't take up the most time, that's just the one we see the most often.
Okay.
Yeah. It's these big requests that take up the most time. And we spent 53 staff hours responding to those 40 requests. So have you got any questions for me, comments, something you'd like to see differently? Better joke?
Mine is just a general question. I'm not sure I necessarily even need an answer today, but to get a 1.4% return on our investments is a little disturbing to me. And I'm wondering if it's a policy issue that we make to be safe, especially in an environment like we're in.
It's both state law and a policy decision.
Right.
It's a combination of
Right.
both. So you're not free just to go out and buy stock in General Motors or anything. You're very restricted in what you're allowed to invest in.
But we could be doing different things as well. And also in a rising interest rate environment, these are things that we purchased a few years ago.
So most of the return is something that we've committed to, and
Right.
Do we have expiration dates coming?
We do. Yep. We have a ladder, a 5-year ladder. They're just spread out throughout that.
Yeah, I think at some point, let's discuss, not tonight, but let's discuss what those parameters are, because I'd love to see a better return on that investment.
We get a slow agenda, then Tamara and I can present to you our investment strategy and the guidelines that we operate under and all that.
Yeah, we have an investment policy, and we can dust that off and take a look and see if there's something we can do differently.
Yeah, I just want to understand it, yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Ann. All right, now we're going to get an ARF update. And Elizabeth.
Good afternoon, Elizabeth Monahan, Director of Human Resources. I have no jokes. I did not know that was expected. That's a good thing, maybe. So, Commissioner Briscoe, you asked the last meeting to just provide an update on where we are with our ARF employees and the membership into LEF. And so I informed all of you March 21, after we had received the information, I provided you notice and I provided the union notice, the local, that the LEF membership was accepted by DRS with an effective date of February 12th. That is the date that we had on the job description, so it's not a mystery how they ended up with that date. And so since March 21, Michelle Allen, who's our payroll specialist, and I have been spending a lot of time with DRS, and I'm happy to say things are chugging along well. So the next pay period, Friday, April 20th, all of the employees affected will see that their PERS contribution doesn't exist on their paycheck anymore, and it will now be converted to LEF. And all of the payroll codes and the codes in DRS, they're active and they're working, and we're now calculating the difference between PERS and LEF because we have to make that retroactive back to February 12th. So everything's chugging along, and once we get those numbers and they're finalized, we'll sit down with employees because they're actually going to owe. The difference is under PERS 2, those people that were in PERS 2, that contribution rate is 7.38%. With LEF, it jumps up to 8.75%. So there's going to be some money that's owed. Anyone that was in PERS 3, that might be a little bit more of a difference because you can elect your percentage, and we have some people that were only paying 5%. So we'll sit down with people and figure out how to take that money back, because that might be a big hit if we do it all at once. We'll give them some time, maybe a few pay periods to make that contribution. And then we'll work with DRS to get our money back, because the port will get some money back from DRS because our contribution rates, the employer contribution rates, have decreased. So we're in the process of working all that out, and it seems to be going quite well. We did hit one kind of surprise, and that was Social Security. So I was completely unaware that the way state pensions, public employer pensions, and Social Security interact, there's a provision out there that says if you have Social Security, you don't have a pension plan, or if you have a pension plan, then it's a Social Security replacement plan. And so by law, if you're in LEF with the Port of Bellingham, you are excluded from Social Security. Oh, wow, that's news. And unfortunately, our payroll system didn't like that answer because it ties Social Security and Medicare together, and it doesn't allow us to separate them out. So as we're trying to figure out a workaround for that, DRS has informed us that there is a method by which you, the board, can authorize a referendum of the employees. So this goes back to 1954 and things with Social Security that I could tell you about and bore you because I have learned so much about Social Security in the last couple weeks. Back in 1954, apparently there were 9 employees at the Port of Bellingham in the Washington State Pension Plan, and those 9 employees were given the right to vote on whether or not they wanted to be voluntarily covered under Social Security and their pension. They all said yes, or at least a majority said yes. Therefore, every employee at the Port of Bellingham in PERS is mandatorily covered under voluntary Social Security. Have I confused you yet?
Keep going, it'll get better.
It'll get better? Okay, so now that we have a newly classified pension plan, that defaults to what the Social Security Administration calls Section 218. I'm not sure what that is, but it's Section 218, and it's very important to these people in Social Security and Department of Retirement Systems. And it says, hey, nobody has voted, therefore they're out. But here's the good news. I have a resolution that DRS has provided to me, and we can bring it forward to you now in the update, or Rob can bring it forward in new business, or if you need to ponder it for a while, you can wait till the first meeting in May. And if you authorize this referendum, you're basically saying that you authorize a resolution that says we adopt Section 218, the Social Security Administration, that will allow our affected employees to have a referendum. And if they vote in favor of being voluntarily covered under Social Security, then they're in. They're in Social Security. If they vote and say no, then they're out, and they're out from Social Security. If they say they're out, then we backdate it to the beginning of the first pay period that they are in LEF, and we go to Social Security and reimburse them their money. And likewise, we get reimbursed because the employer pays into Social Security as well. So that has been a huge learning for us because we thought we were just changing pension plans. No, that's not the case. So if you want to consider the resolution, I'd be happy to kind of go through that, or if you want to bring it up in new business.
I'm fine talking through it.
Let's talk through it.
Yeah, I think we should consider it
see
now.
it.
We're at that
Absolutely.
point in the agenda. Zach's here in case he wants to comment on this. I think now's a good time.
And I guess my question is this binding to future?
Yes.
Yes, it is binding.
When they
I-
vote, they're basically saying yes to, or no to future.
Yes. I believe it is kind of one vote and that's it.
So consider carefully. Sorry.
And part of what I've learned from Department of Retirement Systems is that this is a very prescriptive process. And so if you authorize this resolution, which basically directs Rob to be able to exercise or put into play this referendum, then we kind of hand it over to the Department of Retirement Systems, and they make sure that we follow all the processes. And that includes, they come up here and they give presentations to our employees on the pension plan. They also bring Social Security Administration in so that they can get educated, and so that they have all the facts. And we have to have a wait period of no less than 90 days from when you give notice that we're going to hold the referendum until the referendum, so that people can really get all the facts that they need to be able to make this vote. Because as you mentioned, it is a very important vote that not only affects current employees, but future employees in those positions.
So
we have
my understanding, this would then synchronize what all other port employees already are classified in, right?
Yes.
If they voted.
If they vote in favor of voluntary Social Security coverage
Because that's what was adopted in 1954
by those 9
by those
people.
9 people.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, if they vote no, then they won't be in Social Security. They'll be treated separately from the rest of the
Right.
employees.
Commissioner Briscoe?
With our firefighters that are present in the audience, I'd like to hear something from them. I've read what's here. Can you enlighten us as to where you folks are at on this?
And use the microphone if you would, Zach. Thanks.
And let me ask, do you have enough information to make a comment? Because I may not.
I'm learning this as Elizabeth is letting us know. So it sounds like this is the process that we need to go through, that we have to go through. And we'll be looking forward to the education that we'll be getting from DRS and Social Security to make our decision.
And my question is, you want to go through the process?
Yes,
Okay, very good.
Yes,
That's
yeah.
what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks, Zach.
So if they vote yes, will it make my Social Security any more stable? Because we've got a larger pool?
Sure.
Sure.
Like I
If
said,
they intend on working a long time.
How many million people in America, they're going to really affect it,
they're
big
gonna
effect on your Social
move the
Security.
needle, aren't they?
You're worried about stable?
I'm not going to get Social Security.
I think it's wise to allow the referendum to go forward so that the employees that are affected can make the decision, instead of saying, no, we don't want to approve a resolution, and then you're making the decision for them in the negative. So I think it's appropriate to allow that to go through and let them vote.
I might add, most slash numbers in the state are not in Social Security.
So just for the microphone, because he doesn't have one, what Zach just said is that most of the left members in the state opt out of Social Security. They do not participate in Social Security.
Which further ensures that I'm not going to get my Social Security. Just exclamation point. I'm not.
So, Elizabeth, this resolution number 1372,
Yes.
if we pass this as a commission, this allows the referendum to move forward, correct?
Allows the
Make sure-
referendum and then puts into policy that if the referendum is in favor of Social Security, that we adopt the policy under the Section 218 to allow Social Security.
Okay.
Commissioner Shepherd?
If I might read the motion? A motion to approve Resolution 1372, authorizing the Port of Bellingham to extend the provisions of RCW 41.48-030, providing Social Security coverage to eligible law enforcement officers and firefighters' retirement system members, subject to a referendum in favor of voluntary Social Security coverage.
Any more comments?
I have a question for staff. We've heard from the firefighters. I'd like to hear staff's recommendation.
I would recommend in favor of the resolution, yes.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Okay, no further questions.
I'd vote in favor, yes.
Oh,
Or I guess
called the
we
vote
haven't
yet.
called the
Any
vote
comments?
yet. I don't have any more comments, though, no.
We know where he's at already.
Yeah.
So, resolution, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? None.
Okay,
Motion
thank you.
passes.
So the next steps will be, I guess Zach and I will probably coordinate on figuring out when that 90-day wait period should, or no less than 90 days, so that we pick a date for the referendum, and then I will be on the phone probably first thing tomorrow morning with Department of Retirement Systems and getting everything rolling.
So if they time this right, the offset from Social Security may offset the, it could be, they may have no more money due.
Oh,
I just
you
did
mean
the math in
figuring
my
out the
head.
retros?
Yeah,
Oh, we still have to do that because it's like different pockets of money.
yeah.
And, yeah, so,
His point is the employees may not have to write a check because they'll be getting refunded for Social Security. So, I mean, the math will balance it out, but it'll be what it is.
Elizabeth, I know this has taken a lot of your time and it's been painful, and I appreciate you putting your time to it. Thank you.
I have learned a lot from Department of Retirement Systems. I had no idea that it was, some of these things were as
Thank you.
complex as they
Thank you for
were.
the effort you've put into it. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. All right, thank you.
All right, let's move on to the Blaine Marine Industrial Area update. And Brady.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Brady Scott. I'm the Marine Trades Real Estate Representative here with the Port of Bellingham. So this presentation is an update on the Blaine Marine Industrial Area. The purpose is to provide a site overview, show recent work on upcoming capital projects, and lay out possible future capital projects in the area for consideration in the upcoming budget process. Port staff has also held stakeholder meetings and met individually with all the tenants in the Blaine Marine Industrial Area recently, and we will report on their interests as well. For your reference on the slide, Port staff are defining the Blaine Marine Industrial Area as shown in the picture there in the yellow area. This next slide shows the various infrastructure currently on site, including the overwater structures, sort of in the light blue greenish color, and the buildings more in the darker blue color. This infrastructure consists of both tenant-owned and port-owned improvements. We have 5 primary tenants in the area, including Starfish, Drayton Harbor Fisheries, Boundary Fish, Walsh Marine, and Sound Pacific Seafood. The Blaine Marine Industrial Area also provides commercial fishing facilities, the Sawtooth Dock, and currently the web locker. Noting that these boundaries shown on the slide are approximate and just for planning purposes only. This next slide will show the current condition of the site and quickly describe the recent capital improvement projects that we've done. First focusing on the bulkheads, they're in various states of disrepair as shown here in red, yellow, and green. Noting this information is based on the 2016 condition assessment and is generalized for presentation purposes. Conditions of the bulkheads within each reach vary to some degree. Next, there are 3 areas shown in red that have legacy contamination, as shown here, including the Blaine Marina Inc. Matka site, the Westman Marine Matka site. This is the Blaine Marine site here. This is the Westman Marine site here. Both of those are formal Matka sites, and then the former CK fish site. Recent capital improvement projects include removing the Blaine Marina Appliance Building. You saw that disappear right in that general area. In 2016 and 2017, we refurbished the north and south piers. And then we also made improvements during that same period to the Sawtooth Dock. We've done some emergency repair work on some of the bulkheads in front of Sound Pacific Seafood and also along Marine Drive at the corner of the Starfish lease area. So summarizing the cost to the port for this work to date is approximately $3.1 million. After accounting for the associated MOTCA grant for the environmental work, the net cost is approximately $2.5 million for that work. This last November, we held a stakeholder meeting in Blaine to discuss the Blaine Marine Industrial Area with users. The primary purpose of that meeting was to discuss the future of the site and get stakeholder input. We've also met with all the tenants individually over the past 2 months as well. Stakeholder input includes a general desire for the port to move forward with the environmental cleanup and the bulkhead repairs as soon as possible to ensure that the basic infrastructure needs can be met and to set the stage for future improvements by both port and tenants. There's interest from the multiple tenants in the area to expand their lease areas to increase commerce. Regarding land use, there was support for relocating the web locker and improving the access, including the truck route, parking, and utilities. Finally, there was general interest in additional commercial facilities, such as a marine-related retail, shop space, and possibly a restaurant along the Marine Drive frontage. With that input, port staff has been actively working on several capital improvement projects and environmental cleanup work that are funded in the 2018 budget with a construction plan for 2018 and early 2019. So looking at those projects, first this summer we're moving forward with the cleanup of the Blaine Marina Inc. site, shown there in red. There's an action item later in the commission meeting that will go into more details regarding that. But basically the several buildings on the site will be removed, kind of shown there, and the contamination will be excavated and refilled back in. Drayton Harbor Fishery currently operates out of this facility, and so we're planning to leave one of the buildings on site for their continued use. Next, we have some funding to move forward with some limited bulkhead improvements this year.
Can we back up just a second, Brady?
Sure.
I have a question. We're going to leave a building on site
Yes.
during the cleanup? Is a temporary, we can't bring in a temporary trailer building or something and
So I could try to annotate this real quick for you. So the main building's in here. Oh, I gotta turn the annotator on. Did that show up? The main excavations in this site as I draw here, and that's where the buildings are that will be removed. The building 3 there is that shows in purple.
Oh, the little tin building there?
Yep, is I can point that out real quick.
I know where it is there. See
That one right there would remain because that's functioning for the tenant. That's the plan
Okay.
of the state.
All right, thank you.
Yep. See if I can clear that.
My concern was the main building was staying.
No, that one's coming down, as well as the tanks and their little building in there.
Very good, thank you.
Thanks for the clarification. Okay, we have, as I was saying, we have some funding to move forward with some limited bulkhead work. So there's another action item later in the commission meeting, which will go into more details on that work. But we're currently exploring sites along the southern reach in the Boundary Fish and Walsh Marine areas, shown in these general vicinities, as those areas tie into some current tenant needs. Again, in addition, at the Walsh Marine area, we're going to be working with the tenant to remove the tent improvement, which has sustained storm damage and is no longer functional. And we have funding to construct a new building on that site, which just pops up there in purple. So we're actively working with the tenant and RMC Architects to design the appropriate building to meet the current and long-term boatyard needs, with the goal for construction to complete by the end of 2018. Finally, there's funding to build a new web locker at the other side of the Blaine Marina area off this map, and therefore we expect the existing web locker in the Blaine Marine industrial area to be demolished around the spring of 2019. So looking at those budgets for all those projects listed comes to about $5.4 million, minus the MACA grant, $4.5 million net budget for those projects coming forward. So this next slide shows how the recent capital projects would provide for the future tenant use and expansion interests. First, the Drayton Harbor fishery operation, which currently operates out of the Blaine Marine Inc. site, that's going to be cleaned up with the building demolition. We're proposing to modify modify that area to move towards the north on that site. For their continued use in conjunction with the North Pier. Second, both Walsh Marine and Boundary Fish have expressed a desire to expand their lease areas to the north, as shown. And finally, Sound Pacific Seafood has indicated a possible interest in expanding their lease as well, shown here. Again, these boundaries are approximate and for planning discussions only. But as you can see, much of the Blaine Marine industrial area is proposed to be used for, to expand commerce for the existing tenants.
Quick question, are the expansions contingent upon the work being completed?
For some of them, yeah. Let's see if I can. For instance, the Blaine Marine web lockers here, so for Walsh Marine to expand, that project's already budgeted moving forward. And then we've been keeping this area open for access for Walsh Marine and others. And so as we take down the web locker, access will be improved, which would provide more ability to expand there, as well as the demolition of the Blaine Marina site.
And they've all expressed an interest in leasing more space?
All those three tenants have, yes.
Long term?
That's correct.
There's the optimal location for a restaurant?
People have talked about that along the area of Marine Drive in this vicinity up here. There used to be a restaurant before my time in this vicinity.
Wasn't there one out on the pier at one point in time?
Boy, not that I remember.
No?
We had Fish House out on the pier, right on the,
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
there was a fish house, but not a restaurant.
Not a restaurant.
Their buying station there, Washington Crab Producers had that.
That was on the end pier out here.
Correct.
Yeah,
And that's not part of this discussion, that's
correct. That's outside the scope of this presentation. Let's see, make sure where I'm at here. Okay, so in addition to working on the current funded projects, port staff are also considering what capital improvements could be done in the 2019 to 2022 period. So they can be considered for funding in the next budget cycles. And so I'm going to go through those potential projects. First of all, there's going to be additional bulkhead work needed. Staff believe one of the top priorities for bulkheads after focusing on the areas around Boundary Fish and the Walsh Marine building site, is to tackle the bulkhead at the Sawtooth dock. And this is due, of course, to its condition and in order to set the stage for future Phase 3 Sawtooth dock repairs. So turning to the Sawtooth dock, there's been several stakeholder meetings on the future of that facility. Those discussions have identified the need to update the dock to provide services to the modern commercial fishing fleet, including such thing as developing heavy lift section on the pier and providing certain amenities like a crane. And so that could be looked at. As we've heard from Blaine Marine Industrial Area stakeholders, there's also need to improve the central access area for to improve access to the tenants in the Sawtooth Dock area. This work would address the truck route, parking needs, utility infrastructure, stormwater improvements, especially as we remove the Blaine Marina Inc. buildings and the web locker. Next, the Westman Marine cleanup site is also on the list of work that needs to be done in the future. This project consists of doing bulkhead repairs, and I left off where those bulkhead repairs are, so let me just see if I can quickly draw those. There you go, pardon that. Those would be the bulkhead areas that would need to be built to allow for dredging. And then we would be removing the upland soils and capping the site. And then on the water side, we'd be dredging the marine sediments and redeveloping the infrastructure on that side, including the marine rails and other structures. So that's future work there. Let me just clear this. Oops. Finally, two of our tenants, Starfish Seafood and Boundary Fish, have tenant-owned buildings built on top of the bulkheads that need repair done to them. And so staff envision projects in partnership with those tenants to address those areas of bulkheads at some point in the future. That work is more complex given the nature of the tenant-owned structures built on top of the bulkheads. So given these projects, the end result would provide for upgrades to the bulkheads, environmental cleanup, and tenant expansion, and new access improvements. And the site would look something like this. Port staff recognize that there's a lot of work to be done at the Blaine Marine Industrial Area, and that this will take time and effort to develop that. The next step is to develop cost estimates for these future projects in order to help prioritize this work, given the overall objectives and priorities for the port. In addition, port staff intend to follow up with stakeholders in the next couple months and get further input from the users at the Blaine Marine Industrial Area. So this concludes the update, and we're available for any questions you may have, keeping in mind that next up on the agenda are action items relating to the Blaine Bulkhead Project and the Blaine Marina Inc. Cleanup Project. Thank you.
Mr. Shepard, any comments?
Has any of the stakeholder input been particularly surprising? I mean, a lot of these, projects seem expected to me, that these are the type of things that would be coming down the pipe and how we achieve more efficiencies here. Any comments that have surprised you?
Nothing that's truly surprised me. I mean, I think there's general recognition that there's quite a bit of work needed to be done up there by the stakeholders, and with partnership in the port with the port. So I can't think of anything particular that described me or that surprised me.
Okay.
Regards to Boundary Fish and their dock, correct me if I'm wrong, they own the pier that's adjacent to their building, correct?
That's correct. This structure right here is what you're talking about.
Yes, and it's in disrepair. It's not in very good shape. my question to you, in discussions with those folks, and we're going to be repairing the bulkhead behind there, has it been brought up or thought of that they repair their dock simultaneously, and that they may be able to save a lot of money, and would there be port assistance available to help them get that done in that same time frame?
There's a general interest.
Entering into the discussion at all?
Yeah, they've raised the need to do some repairs to their dock. The timing of that, for them, I think there's uncertainty there. They certainly have requested over the last years, asking when we could move forward with working the bulkhead, doing the bulkhead work with the idea that they need to do some certain repairs to their improvement. And they've asked about the timing of that and how that could work together. And so the latest discussion we've had is they're more focused on the surface of the top and doing maintenance associated with that, and maybe not completely rebuilding their entire pier, but we certainly will be continuing to communicate with them on their desires and any work we're doing in there, coordinating our work to best facilitate their activities as well.
Do you know that, have they had that pier inspected, the pilings and so on and so forth? Have they done an inspection?
I'm not aware of a condition assessment that they've done for their improvement, no.
Maybe you might mention to them that maybe they should have a conditions inspection done of that piling, because it's not going to do much good to put new decking on top of the dock if it's going to fall down.
Correct, yeah.
And I can only speak for myself as a commissioner, but I would entertain assisting them in repairing that dock simultaneously, so that as we rebuild our harbor, all of our infrastructure is good.
Thank you.
In general, these lease expansions, is it just giving them more room to operate more efficiently, or are we looking at them changing operations or enhancing their operations to bring on more employees? Is there a mix?
Yeah, there's kind of a mix. Boundary Fish would like to do some more processing on site, some value-added products, and so they'd like to add a new building for that, which would bring new employees. Wallace Marine, I think, could generally use more area for boats, which would bring more commerce, more revenue to them, as well as support more staff. And I think it's similar interest with South Pacific.
And we're talking about similar lease rates that we've got for existing properties when they expand. Is that correct?
That'd be.
Yeah, our marine trade rates are all set the same.
Anything else?
I have one more question. In regards to the building that you had, if you maybe could back up a slide, the orange, it was in orange for Bingham, is Dakota, I forget what it's called now.
Well,
They have the North Pier there.
yeah.
Building, I guess it's building,
Talking about this one.
next one, that
That
one.
one there.
Have they indicated the size of the building there? Because they're a live crab buyer, and I'm kind of curious, are they going to expand into a different business, or that, I know this isn't to scale, but they got a pretty large area there.
Yeah, they've currently used that building for holding at times.
No, I'm talking, you said they were going to build new.
I'm not sure of their plans to build new. They have a small office area they'd bring in there, and they've used quite an outdoor laydown area. And so that area in orange is generalized. The exact size would be determined, but it would be potential. They haven't expressed a desire to build a new building.
Okay, so I misunderstood, and that's not a new building, that's just an area they want.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Continue their current operations.
Figure out why we're putting such a large building in that area for a live crab bar.
Thanks for
That's just
clarifying
their
that.
leasehold, yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you. That's all I have.
And I am going to go touch on the third rail here between my two commissioners on the restaurant. It would be really nice to have a tenant before we did anything with the restaurant. I believe that should be a market-based infrastructure. And so having somebody to take that lease before we did that would be
Yeah, we don't currently have any plans for a restaurant. If we did do something, I think it'd be after we get some of this cleanup and infrastructure done, then we do an RFP and see who responds to it, so.
I just know that we're sitting
We have a
on,
lot, there's a lot of interest.
that'd be great. Yeah, I just know we're sitting on some empty restaurant and coffee space that we shouldn't.
It wouldn't, it would be, the lower floor would be Marine Trades rental too, so it wasn't just a restaurant.
Great.
I'll talk to you about it sometime when the three of us can talk.
I'm sure you will. All right. We missed the magic time when Diane gets excited at 5:30, but let's take a 5-minute break. Is that enough?
That's fine.
And then we'll come back and reconvene.
I can get out of the chair, man. It's like,
Yeah, so Wednesday, April 7th. And in this time period, if anybody's thought of anything that they would like to say, we'll have a 15-minute comment period. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Did anybody sign up?
We don't have anyone signed up currently?
We have someone who wish to speak? Step to the mic and give us your name. Either one.
Good evening. My name is Eddie Uri. I'm the Clean Energy Program Manager at Resources for Sustainable Communities. And we're a partner in a local roundtable called the Blue Green Waterfront Coalition, along with the Northwest Central Labor Council, Jobs with Justice, and the Sierra Club Mount Baker Group. We meet together and advocate jointly for our shared priorities and values that we like to see upheld in the waterfront redevelopment process. Those are ensuring the highest standards for cleanup, living wage jobs for the community in the development we have, protection of habitat and the marine ecosystems, and a triple bottom line approach to development. That means valuing economy, environment, and social equity all at once in our decisions. And I'd like to thank Mr. Fix and Mr. Gorin and Commissioner Shepard for meeting with us a few months ago and talking through some of the changes in the new plan. And we also, a couple weeks ago, submitted a letter to the Port Commission I hope you all had a chance to look at, and suggesting that it might be time to revisit some of the conditions in the master plan, sub-area plan for the waterfront district, and by extension, the development regulations. And we were suggesting that we think there could be a higher standard for ensuring green building with low carbon materials, community benefits agreements for development to prioritize local hire and fair wages, and affordable housing, ensuring actual affordable housing. Because what we have in the designated numbers for the floor area plan, we don't believe that it will actually achieve those goals in reality in the conditions that we have. And we're looking at public property. And folks may want to say that we can't have all these things at once. We can't have our cake and eat it too. But we can. It's just a matter of envisioning it and holding that space and holding out and making sure we don't just we don't just go along with whatever proposal we can get, whatever the best we can get, which I understand was a mindset some years ago when Master Development Agreement was signed with Harcourt. And I'll just say that and I understand that we could have engaged at an earlier point when it comes to the lease sale agreement for the 3 new condo buildings. It's on the agenda tonight and I understand the project memo signed. Things were we have a master development agreement. We had a price set, but I know that just everyone I've talked to is shaking their heads at this right now. I don't know anyone who likes this, to see these luxury condos be put up along the Whatcom Waterway there. And I understand that maybe it's too late to change that, and maybe all we can do at this point is shake our heads. But it just seems like a bad look. And for whatever we can do, whatever steps we can take in the future, I think to get the highest conditions for development, we can get that. There are developers out there. Harcourt came to Bellingham via chance, via a random personal connection. We can find other developers if we try, and we can hold them to a high standard, because we're talking about building to last for centuries down there if we do it right. So anyway, I hope to discuss some of these matters with you further. Thank you very much for hearing me tonight.
Could you enlighten me a little bit, Eddie, before you leave there? You made a couple of statements that I'd like you to clarify to me.
Sure.
Everybody's shaking their heads. I'd like to know what everybody is shaking their heads about.
Yeah. One, like I was saying, we're because we're in a crisis for affordable housing, where folks who are making less than the median income cannot afford places to live for a family. We need to build more of that, and so building more luxury condo units at this time, people just don't like seeing that. Also, just the fact it doesn't seem to be benefiting the public interest in that. And what are we getting out of it? For a $1.6 million sale price for 70 luxury units that are going to get built there. I understand we were locked into that sale price, but it's not what people want to see right now.
What would people want to see along the waterfront park on the front there? Would we want to see a lot of of lesser income housing units along there, along the park? Is this what you're saying, or I'm not quite understanding?
No, not, oh, I understand that any residential property in that place is going to be for high value. I think it's the fact that not only are we going to decide to put housing there along the waterway, which doesn't necessarily have to be where we have housing of all places, given that we're investing for this to be, and granted, it is nice to see the development happening, that it will be there will be public access along in front of those units, and we love to see that public access is opening up down there. I'm not saying affordable housing can be in that spot. It's what essentially that we're giving away this land to this foreign private developer for this super great bargain, and what are we getting in return for the general public and the folks who are, I would love to live in one of those units if I could afford it. I'm sure it'll be a great spot to live, but for most people can't.
Well, if we turn around and look from that area you're looking to, if you turn around and look to the east, that's where the plan comes in. That's where we want to bring the green jobs. That's where we want to put all that stuff is right behind it. So in order to do that, you have to attract that stuff. And sometimes you have to do things around the fringes to attract all the good stuff in the middle. So for those people that are shaking their heads, I would ask them to turn to the east and look and see what happens there.
And we are looking there, and we do hope to, and that is, we can only look forward, look to the future, and what else we can get in those. And we do hope to see, light wage industrial, living wage jobs, clean tech coming down to the waterfront. We want to see more of that. All I'm saying is, I think we want to be following more closely what's happening when it comes to the next property sale agreement. And if we're going to do that, we could at least maybe get the highest conditions possible. I'm talking about ensuring net zero buildings that are, I'm talking about, using state of the art design that really is the model of the future that we want to see when it comes to, you're public entity. We can hold to a higher standard here. We're not just driven by profit, we're driven by the public. It's for the public interest. So, but you're right. Thank you for hearing me out here.
Very good. Thank you, Eddie.
Yeah.
Thank you for what you do. Appreciate it.
And I'll just note that certainly one avenue for some of these comments and some of this interest is going to be the city process for the sub-area plan amendment. And there's numerous opportunities for public engagement and public input, and that process is going to be open for the next 9 months, and I would encourage folks to be involved in it. We've got a mandate in that sub-area plan for 10% affordable housing down there. If folks want to see that higher, that is the avenue that's best open to us.
Thanks. So we'll be talking to the city as well. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the action items. Diane?
Authorize the executive director to execute a professional services agreement with Berger ABAM Incorporated for alternative analysis and preliminary design for the Blaine Harbor Marine Industrial Peninsula Bulkhead Replacement Project in the amount of $49,974, plus a 10% contingency for a total authorized contract amount of $54,971.40.
I apologize in advance for any redundancy with Brady's previous presentation. There's quite a bit of overlap between these two. As Brady mentioned, we did a condition assessment in 2016, which identified a number of bulkheads that are in either serious or critical condition. Those include the bulkheads beneath the Starfish building, or Starfish Seafood building, the bulkheads along the south side of the Boundary Fish property, the bulkheads around the Walsh Marina property, and the bulkhead along the face of the Sawtooth Pier. There are two additional areas that were identified as being dilapidated, and we're actually creating some hazards that our maintenance team has at least temporarily addressed. Those include the bulkhead beneath the Sound Pacific Seafood and a portion of the bulkhead beneath the Starfish Seafood property. One thing to note on those two areas is we shouldn't consider those to be repaired. They are temporarily addressed. So we've addressed the safety hazard, we've addressed the creation of sinkholes, but it is something that we're going to have to come back to in a 5 to 10 year period. So it's something we want to keep on the radar. As Brady mentioned, the two areas that we've identified for the 2018 repairs, which have been selected primarily because of planned upland work that would impact these bulkheads, as the commissioner mentioned previously. Boundary Fish has at least tentative plans to do some work on their existing bulkheads. And so we've identified that bulkhead as being one to deal with now so that we can intermesh their upgrade work with our bulkhead replacement work. The second location is at the Walsh Marine property. That bulkhead, while it is identified as a concern, the primary reason that we want to address that is that there is a plan to construct a building on the upland that would interfere with access for cranes to be installing sheet piles. And so it would be ideal if we can to get that bulkhead repaired prior to construction of that building.
See them doing that bulkhead work from the upland and not from the barge on the water?
Given the opportunity, there's a high likelihood it would be done from the upland. Mobilizing a land-based crane is generally a more cost-effective method.
How would that interfere with Boundary Fish's daily operations on the?
That's definitely something that we would need to coordinate because we would have to stay out of their way. They do have access to the south pier while we're doing that work. Again, it would be a coordination issue that we would schedule that around the fishing season. Which is something we always strive for on the Blaine Peninsula.
Okay, thank you.
So for these two locations, and I give credit to Berger Abam for these two really nice figures. We've identified, at least preliminarily, two primary methods of replacement. The first being to install the new sheet pile wall behind the existing bulkhead. The advantage with that is that you're not moving out the shoreline. You're not doing in-water work, and so it's a lot easier process to permit. The second option, if installing behind the bulkhead is not viable, would be to install it waterward of the bulkhead. And that would have some permitting implications that could potentially make for a longer project and delay installation.
Question?
Yes, sir.
The sheet pile there, do you know, is that going to be metal or is that going to be synthetic? And the reason I ask is because we've had the degradation problems with the breakwater in Blaine. So I'm curious as to what we're going to put in there to last into the future.
So as a general rule, we do use a steel bulkhead that's typically galvanized and cathodically protected and in some occasions coated. But we do have systems in place these days to protect those. I'm not familiar with a synthetic sheet pile that's been used in great regularity.
The reason I ask is because last year they did the entire bulkhead in the harbor in Westport, Washington.
Okay.
The city of Westport did that, and it is all synthetic. It's all plastic. Okay. And I watched them drive. It drove really quick, really easy, and really quick.
That's absolutely something we will consider.
So, I actually had the card, and I don't know what I did with it, but I'm going to be going down again, and they do have the top. They have the group that did it and what have you. I'll see if I can take a picture of it. But it looked to me that it would outlast steel and galvanizing by a long ways.
This is Port of Grace Harbor?
Yes.
We'll absolutely look into that. I was not familiar with that material. One third alternative that I am having the engineer look at is at least under the Boundary Fish pier. It's actually a fairly short bulkhead, and so I'd like to at least consider the option of laying back that slope to eliminate the bulkhead and just create a revetment, which would result in extending that pier, but it would eliminate that bulkhead, which bulkheads are just notoriously difficult to maintain and expensive to build and expensive to keep in place. It's something that we can
I don't think that you'll have an issue with push out, but it's something that we very well may have to do some soil improvements, which is absolutely viable, and we will have a geotech under contract, subcontracted to Berger ABAM to look into those options.
And what factor makes the behind option, the first option on the left, more or less successful for being able to be attained?
So one of the challenges is a lot of times bulkheads have tiebacks. I'm not certain if these two particular bulkheads have tiebacks. And to install behind, you would actually have to go through those tiebacks. If you're familiar, it's basically just steel rods or sometimes timber that extends back into the soil and holds up the bulkhead. And so if those exist, then we would have to go through those, and in some conditions, you can actually do that without it being a problem. But if the bulkhead is in poor enough condition, you wouldn't be able to do that. The other issue is if you have a lot of large rock or debris or other unknowns in the soil, that can interfere with the installation of the sheet pile. So it's something that we would have to really understand the soils to do, but it's definitely probably a viable option in this location. And I would say that we would look at that as our first alternative.
What's the cost differential between the two? Do you have a feel for that?
They're similar, but where you're going to see the most impact is from the permitting standpoint, because you could run into having to mitigate for pushing out that shoreline. And so in most cases, if you do that, you have to mitigate for that somewhere else. And that can be pulling back a shoreline somewhere else or eliminating a bulkhead somewhere else. And sometimes they'll even allow you to remove an existing structure.
So the first option would not have that that impact, but the second option would?
Most likely correct.
And then from a functional standpoint, is there an advantage one over the other, functional?
Not substantially. They effectively accomplish the same goal.
And at the end of the day, we'll know which one of these options to move forward with our.
Exactly, and that's the intent of this first professional services agreement with Berger ABAM, is to do an alternative analysis to determine which of these options is going to be viable, and also help us to figure out what the project costs are going to be, so that we can understand how much project we can afford.
Okay. Commissioner Shepard? Commissioner Briscoe, any more? Okay. Thank you. You keep going.
Port staff advertised a request for proposals for this project to do the preliminary design and permitting and alternative analysis. We received bids from 3 very qualified engineering firms. We're recommending award to Berger ABAM from Federal Way. Berger ABAM is extremely experienced working in Blaine Harbor. In addition, they've been extremely successful as the design engineer for the Harris Avenue Shipyard Interim Action Project, which is currently on schedule, actually ahead of schedule and on budget. As I mentioned, their scope of work would include alternative analysis, preliminary design, and planning level cost estimating. And we would then move to a contract amendment with them once we've identified what project we are going to build to do that design. Tentative schedule, we're looking at doing design and permitting in the second and third quarters of 2018. Construction, as I mentioned, will depend on the alternative that's selected. The best case would be to start construction later this year, finishing in the beginning of 2019. Worst case would be to start construction in 2019, finishing in 2020. If the second option were to be realized, there's a high likelihood, if we were to have additional bulkhead work budgeted for 2019, that we would combine those into a single project. And just to give you an update as to other work, that we're foreseeing, which Brady has already touched on. The project that we're currently looking at is most likely for the 2019, if it were to be budgeted, is the bulkhead adjacent to the Sawtooth Pier. The other two bulkheads of concern are the one beneath the Starfish Seafoods building and the one beneath the Boundary Fish Seafood building. And the schedule for those are a little bit dependent on tenant negotiations and identifying a solution to replace those bulkheads beneath an existing building.
CK build, the old CK building, that bulkhead under there, is there an issue with building support, structural support with that bulkhead, or is it just?
There is an issue with the support of that building, and they're actually, Brady, correct me if I'm wrong, but they're not using that, a portion of that building, is that correct?
Okay, so we have a structural problem.
Correct. Any other questions?
Joke?
I wasn't prepared.
So I think you're gonna have to have like a staff get-together to bring the joke thing up, right?
Yeah. That'll be other business later. All right. You don't want to read it again, yeah.
Authorize the executive director to execute a professional services agreement with Berger ABAM Incorporated for alternative analysis and preliminary design for the Blaine Harbor Marine Industrial Peninsula bulkhead replacement project in the amount of $49,974, plus a 10% contingency for a total authorized contract amount of $54,971.40.
Commissioners in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you. Second action item.
A motion authorizing the executive director to execute a consent decree with the Washington State Department of Ecology to perform cleanup actions at the Blaine Marina, Inc. site pending no substantive changes to the draft consent decree.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Ben Howard, Environmental Project Manager at the Port of Bellingham. Today I'm presenting the action item for authorization of the Blaine Marina, Inc. cleanup site consent decree to perform the cleanup action at the site. As shown on the opening slide, the site is located within the Blaine Marine Industrial Area, as Brady described earlier. This area in Blaine Harbor was historically tide flats prior to dredging and filling in the 1940s. The Blaine Marina, Inc. fueling facility was constructed in the mid-1950s. And the fueling facility distributed petroleum products mainly for the commercial fishing vessels and recreational boats. Blaine Marina, Inc. continued operations through 2015. The Blaine Marina, Inc. site was identified by Ecology as a state-listed MACA cleanup site in 2011. In 2012, the Port and Ecology entered into an agreed order to perform an interim action and remedial investigation and feasibility study. The interim action consisted of a bulkhead repair to address the failing bulkhead and prevent the release of petroleum contamination to Blaine Harbor. And this work was completed in 2012. The RIFS was approved in 2015, and the findings of the remedial investigation showed petroleum impacts to soil and groundwater, including free product underneath the above-ground storage tanks. And the feasibility study identified a preferred cleanup action for the site. This caption illustrates the conceptual site model for the site, and it shows petroleum releases from the fueling facility into soil and groundwater, and then the petroleum migrated into a dissolved phase in the vicinity. It's important to note that the contamination does not migrate to Blaine Harbor's surface waters, and no sediment impacts have been identified. In 2017, the Port and Ecology entered into an agreed order amendment And the agreed order amendment included a cleanup action plan, which documents Ecology's selected cleanup for the site. The agreed order amendment, the scope of work was to perform the engineering, and the engineering design has been completed to date. And a consent decree is necessary to perform the cleanup action of the site moving forward. The purpose of the consent decree is to identify the scope of work for the cleanup coming up, and it includes a settlement agreement with Ecology. The consent decree is entered into Whatcom County Superior Court, and that's the subject of today's action item, is requesting authorization to execute the consent decree following a public comment period. And the cleanup action components include removal of above-ground storage tanks and the related structures, building demolition, and as Brady mentioned earlier, we're going to retain one building to accommodate tenant operations. There'll be excavation of petroleum-contaminated soil and off-site disposal, surface restoration, including backfill to existing grade, and there will be a bioremediation program installed to address residual dissolved phase groundwater contamination. And that consists of a series of infiltration trenches to inject a nitrate solution to enhance aerobic degradation of the site contaminants. Groundwater monitoring will evaluate the performance and inform any changes to the bioremediation program. And the compliance monitoring will be performed to assess the progress. This slide illustrates the areas of the site where soil excavation and bioremediation will take place. And the green outline shows the site boundary. Pending authorization from the Commission, the next steps in the cleanup process are as follows. The draft consent decree will include a public comment period of 30 days, and this is anticipated from May 7th to June 6th. The consent decree will be signed by the Port and Ecology and entered into Whatcom County Superior Court. The Port is in the process of finalizing the remedial grant funding agreement with Ecology, and this includes a 50% matching cleanup costs. And we are currently in the process of completing the final design and bid documents. The project is anticipated to begin late July and continue through October of this summer. And then following construction, the bioremediation program will be implemented along with the groundwater monitoring. So yeah, thank you. And let me know if you have any questions.
If everybody will indulge me, I'd like to back up to your very opening slide, if you could, Ben, please.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the next one. Oh, there we go, that one there. If my fellow commissioners would look at that picture, you will see that that little industrial piece of ground was pretty mighty in the past. And although our fleet now probably harvest is 20 times more efficient, would be my guess, and you'll never see that size of fleet again there. That piece of ground is very important to Blaine, and if we plan right and do things right, I think we can put that piece of ground back to work as efficiently as it was when it was started. And that's one of my goals. So I just wanted to point that out to you, how important that piece of ground is to the city of Blaine. Thank you. And thank you, Ben, for your presentation.
I've got a quick question. You said there was no migration, and is that because most of the migration that might have happened already happened, and we don't have the concentrations to do that, or is there a natural barrier there to keep from?
You mean migration to the surface waters?
Yeah.
To Blaine Harbor?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we have monitoring wells along the Sigerts in there, right at that interface.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's no contamination above cleanup levels there. And sometimes along kind of the tidal influence will have a big factor in that too. It'll kind of, instead of migrating, the tides kind of keep it kind of slushing back and
Nice that
forth.
it's stationary, that it's not moving, that's a bonus. All right. And I guess I would just throw my hat in to say, when you go out to bid for disposal, you're looking at thermal as well as landfill?
Yeah, I think that is on the table, yeah.
Because I think, I'm a fan of thermal, and I think it takes care of our liability long-term versus putting it in a landfill, so that's, all right.
Yeah. And I'll just echo what Commissioner Briscoe said about our investment in Blaine. I think it's really important that we do, and you can see from the earlier presentations that this is not a small investment the port is making here, and we're up to $8 million plus that we're putting into this facility, and I think it's been something that has great opportunity to activate some economic potential here, and I'm excited to see this happening. So thank you for the work.
Yep. Yeah, and we're lucky too to have a good partner in this with Ecology and the grants. In fact, the Ecology site manager is here today, Chris Matthews. But so yeah, we have a good partner with Ecology who has helped set us up for the project.
Well, no one can no one can doubt our commitment to Blaine after this agenda. So it's very clear to your credit. That's all I have.
All right, thank you.
Commissioners?
No, I have nothing.
Thank you. Okay. Should we reread it?
A motion authorizing the executive director to execute a consent decree with the Washington State Department of Ecology to perform cleanup actions at the Blaine Marina, Inc. site, pending no substantive changes to the draft consent decree.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thanks. All right. Action item number 3.
A motion to authorize the executive director to execute the following documents in connection with the Cohannon Bellwether LLC Building A located at 21 Bellwether Way and any and all required documents necessary for this transaction. A consent to sublease agreement with Cohannon Bellwether LLC and Whatcom Educational Credit Union, a subordination and non-disturbance agreement with Cohannon Bellwether LLC and Whatcom Educational Credit Union, and a trademark licensing agreement with Whatcom Educational Credit Union.
Commissioners, Judy Harvey, Senior Real Estate Representative, Port of Bellingham. The transaction before you today is with regard to Cohannon Bellwether's sublease. The underlying lease requires port approval for any sublease that is over a term of 10 years, term including renewals. This is the case for their sublease with Whatcom Educational Credit Union. We are excited about the opportunity to have Whatcom Educational Credit Union at Bellwether, and staff recommends approval of this transaction. Any questions?
Got a question about general office space that we have available. If this is a substantial piece of property here that's going to be leased out, what does this do for our overall makeup of availability?
Non-existent. Yeah, sorry, Judy, but there's just no,
Thank you.
I mean, and there's some realtors in the room too, if you want to pop up and chime in. There's not a lot of commercial office space available. Bits and pieces here, maybe some Class C, Class D, but for higher end space, it's non-existent after this piece goes.
And how does that compare to what we see in the rest of Bellingham?
I'm talking about all of Bellingham. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. For the port, it's zero. I mean, our availability in commercial property is more industrial that we have, the tissue warehouse, that kind of stuff. But we don't have any office space to rent out. A little bit of retail and some industrial, but no office. It's one of the reasons Harcourt's going to push hard to advance their office project, because they believe that the opportunity is there.
Okay. I welcome having neighbors.
Can we get 1.8 on the money or what?
I'll bet, man, we better get
1.4.
And I would imagine that CH2M Hill is happy to have this opportunity as well. So full support of this. Gentlemen, anything else?
I have no questions.
Going to bring enough people to maybe put a coffee shop down below. Can we work on that? Yeah, I'm just a little bit selfish there. And can I borrow the deck from time to time for tanning sessions?
We're getting pushy now.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Welcome. Welcome to the neighborhood. Action item number 4.
Motion to approve resolution number 1371, authorizing the sale of real property to Harcourt Bellingham LLC for project number 2, and authorize the executive director to execute any and all documents necessary to complete the sale of the 1.733 acres for project 2.
Thank you, Diane. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Brian Gowron, Director of Environmental Programs. The resolution that's before you today is related to the Harcourt second project on the waterfront and the process that is outlined for a purchase and sale of property per the Master Development Agreement or MDA. This transaction includes the sale of about 1.7 acres of property along Granary Avenue, shown roughly here, just approximately on this figure in the green box. It's sandwiched between Granary Avenue, which is under construction right now, not shown on this figure, and the Whatcom Waterway. And it includes the project, Harcourt's project, includes the development of 3 new mixed-use residential and commercial buildings with ground floor retail and commercial, a level of subgrade parking. It also includes public open space between the buildings for access to Waypoint Park and the Whatcom Waterway. And all of those elements are consistent with the project memorandum that Harcourt proposed and the Commission approved a couple meetings back as well. This purchase price is for just over $1.6 million, which is based on a $21.22 per square foot.
Just jump in real quick on the price. When we negotiated the MDA, Master Development Agreement with Harcourt, we're at $20 a foot. It increases at 3% per year after that. We do a lot of leasing activity. Shirley, do we have a single lease based on $20 a foot? I don't think we've ever done a lease at $20 a foot. Everything's less than that, right? Yes. So, and I bring that up because the gentleman earlier made a point that we're giving the property away. I think you'd have a hard time pulling comparables in the downtown Bellingham region that shows property being sold for more than $20 a foot. We're getting an incredible value, and we're increasing at 3% a year. So, just wanted to comment on that.
That's right. And the property value based on the MDA was also had 2 appraisals that were done, and they came in above $20 per square foot. But it also took into account the materials management, being with a brownfield site and dealing with the heavy industrial subgrade of unknown structures. And there's a significant number of them even on this parcel right here that they're going to have to deal with. So it was a known compromised piece of property. So all the property valuation was taken into account in the MDA, and it's documented in there as well. So based on the steps for property sales that are mapped out in the MDA, we're anticipating closing on this transaction pending Commission approval of this resolution on or by May 7th. And staff does recommend approval of this. However, we want to keep in mind that although we have transferred property to Harcourt in the past to the Granary building and the Granary parcel, that was all built into the MDA itself. And so this is actually the first independent property transaction following the process that's lined out in the Master Development Agreement, which is fairly prescriptive. And so with that in mind, I have asked Frank just to give a quick background and context of the process lined out in the MDA. And following that, Rob, Frank, or myself would be happy to address any questions you might have.
So, Commissioners, the Master Development Agreement was signed in 2015 between the Port and Harcourt Bellingham LLC. In the main, it commits Harcourt to a series of developments over a period of years. This is the second development, and they are on schedule on this development in light of the fact that the city road was delayed by about a year. And so this is Project 2 in the MDA. They were required to submit a project memorandum to the Port, which was approved. The Port created a legal lot of record. So this is a big, large site, and we use the binding site plan process to create legal lots of record. The road is now, it's not paved, but the sidewalks are in, and it's just about there. So Harcourt is obligated, and the Port is obligated to close this transaction within 60 days of those 2 events. So that's May 7th, 2018. The price is determined in the MDA. The purchase and sale agreement was an exhibit to the MDA. There's an environmental indemnification agreement that is an exhibit to the MDA. The Port reserves the right to come on the property to test groundwater if necessary. And then if Harcourt has the right to open a single-purpose entity to hold this project, but then the master developer has to guarantee, and there's a guarantee agreement in the MDA where they have to sign to guarantee the performance of the of the single-purpose entity, and then they have to stick to the schedule in the project memorandum. If any of those things fall through in Harcourt's performance, then they start to lose their exclusive rights on the property, essentially is what happens. It's basically automatic that they lose exclusive rights on the property. But so long as they stick to the schedule and do their part of the deal, then they get to keep creating parcels and building. The third leg of this is, because they were always our partner from the beginning, was the city of Bellingham. As you know, we passed a sub-area plan with the city's help and development regulations. And so the developer, be it Harcourt or anyone, has to go to the city and be in compliance with the development regulations, be in compliance with the sub-area plan, meet the city's design standards, which are also part of this process, and then get building permits from the city. So the city does all the design side, the building permit side, all that side. We do the cleanup side and the property sale side, and the developer does the development side. So it's kind of a three-legged transaction. So I can answer any questions you have about how the MDA is put together. The critical schedule found at 4.1 that tells you when their next project has to go after this project. So they have to complete this project, and then there's another follow-on project, project number 3. They have to start planning and submit to the port at some date in the future.
So what happens if we do not meet our part of the obligation?
Interestingly, the agreement does not provide for the remedy that is very common in the United States, which is damages to either side. But Harcourt would be excused from their performance then. So once one party breaches an agreement, the other party can breach the agreement. That's how agreements universally work. And then I suppose Harcourt could seek court orders to make us comply with our end of the bargain. Likewise, if they don't comply with their end of the bargain, then the agreement provides that we're relieved of providing an exclusive right to them to develop this first 19 acres.
And nothing, they can't fall behind the set schedule in the MDA, but nothing precludes them from exceeding and moving forward faster than what is written, correct?
Yes, the MDA tries to anticipate the future, and so for the granary project, they couldn't fall behind at all. This is called Project 2. For Project 2, they could extend Project 2's deadline if the city infrastructure wasn't put in place, or if we didn't complete the environmental cleanup. So obviously, if we're still out there doing remediation, or the city hasn't built the road yet, then they could come and say, well, it doesn't make much sense for us to build an apartment or a condos because there's no road. And if you recall, that's what in part held them up on the granary building. There was literally no sewer connection, no water connection, no electrical connection that would service the rehabilitated, no road, so you couldn't get there. After Project 2, so Project 3 and on, there is an additional way that the projects could be extended if economic conditions, kind of in an objective sense, render future development impracticable. Okay, and there's a process where the parties get together, and that, you recall, this was in 2015. We'd just come off the Great Recession, and so the question was asked, well, what happens after the first 2 projects if the economy tanks, nobody's building anything, and we're all kind of hanging on for another 8-year run of the economy? And there is a process where that can be extended for that unique situation. But outside of that, other than the port and the city not delivering infrastructure, or only from Project 3 on, if there's an economic issue that we all basically agree to, is there a right to extend the schedule? Now, they can come to the port and say we want to extend the schedule if they'd like, and you can decide. Or there's nothing to stop them from going faster. They can build as many buildings as fast as the city can provide the infrastructure, the port can complete the cleanup, and we can create the lots. And so right now, we've completed the cleanup, and the city's done their major piece of infrastructure, so nothing to stop them from going faster.
Thank you, Frank.
Yeah, so I think we're at a really exciting point. We're finally going to get to see some new buildings in the works, and we're going to get the public park is nearly open. We're seeing the roads going in, and there's quite a bit of enthusiasm for people to get down and enjoy this part of our waterfront. And I think we're always trying to balance that with, are we achieving the best possible product for the public as well? Because we have had substantial public investment in this. Yes, Harcourt's paying for it, but we as a community, we as a state, have made substantial investment into this project, whether it's roads or it's cleanups or it's parks or it's extensive amount of staff time here and at the city. This project has been rolling along for much longer than I've been on commission, by a factor of probably about 150. And so I think we're at that precipice of being able to move forward, and that's quite exciting. When the original vote came up for the memorandum, I voted against it because I didn't feel I had enough time to research all of the process for the permit moving forward and what happens. And I'd like to just share back some of what I've learned about that process and really how it operates at the city level. And so if this is approved today, the developer and the city will continue in their negotiation around the building permits for these 3 residential buildings. And the buildings don't meet everyone's standard. I've certainly pushed back on some of the design. The city's pushed back on some of the design. They've received comments from the Blue-Green Waterfront, from professional architects like RMC, and from other professionals in the community. There are processes in place, so there will be, once the city and the developer identify an agreement for their initial design plans, there is a public comment period that opens up. After that public comment period, there is then a Citizens Design Review Board. That's a city board. It has actually 1 vacancy on it, if anyone's so interested. It's mostly made up with people who have some architectural or other industry experience here on that. The city generally puts a lot of weight in the recommendations of that board. So once that board completes the recommendations, then it goes forward to a neighborhood meeting. There's not necessarily a lot of neighborhood right where this is associated, but it is another open public opportunity for people to weigh in. And finally, all those recommendations can get rolled back into the negotiation between the developer and the city, who will then determine if a application for permit is granted. So there are a number of opportunities there. I think the permit process is designated with the city, and they are the ones who are going to really operate that permit process. And so I encourage folks to be involved there, and the other, again, major involvement opportunities in that sub-area plan amendment that will be coming up. But I've already expressed to Harcourt and the developer, and I think they've been quite responsive, that we are interested in things like a sense of place and a sense of character and common themes in the development. We're interested in high standards of environmental sustainability in the design and the materials that are used, things that reflect our community and in our culture here and in how we see this development achieved. And I think they know that, and I think they are being responsive. I also encourage folks to continue letting them know that if that is your interest as well.
Commissioners, I might say I unfortunately started at a young age, so I've been here since the beginning, 2003.
Is that time or commission?
Since you brought it up, I'll tell you my lawyer joke that will win the evening. How do you know it's cold out? Lawyer has his hands in his own pockets.
I like that one. I like that one.
What I was going to tell you, commissioners, is Commissioner Shepard, what you said is exactly true. When this was started back then, as an observer, because what happened here was that there was a partnership formed, and the port said, we're pretty good at environmental cleanup. That's what we do. We can also do in-water work. We do that well. In-water infrastructure, we do that well. The city said, we do roads well. That's our area. We also do this kind of development evaluation very well. That's what we do at the city. We're set up for that. We have the commissions and the groups and we understand that. And the city also said, we do parks well. That's what we do. We're good at parks. And so the whole thing was constructed to let the various governments that have the expertise step in and, as you say, use their expertise where they're strong. So you see all the cleanups are done by the port, the roads done by the city, the parks by the city, development regulations, the sub-area plan, that all goes through that whole public process that the port frankly is just not set up to accommodate that kind of, don't have the regulatory authority for all of that. And then the developer came in and said, okay, I'll abide by the system. So it's kind of that three-legged stool, Commissioner, that you spoke of. And that was really the whole idea of this, is let's get the strengths of the various governments to bear on the issues they're good at.
And I might add, my personal opinion on that is, as a commissioner, our commission needs to keep rolling things along. It's our job to keep it moving. And you can argue these other things along the way, but if we stop to argue about it all the time, nothing's going to get done. And in our society today, things move really slow. And if we slow it up any more than it gets slowed up by the automatic bridges and hurdles that are already there, it stymies. And we've seen that with this project over here, the arguing and the stopping and the undecision making. So when you sit here, you have to keep in mind that the regulatory authorities, like the city with the planning and that, they're going to take care of their job. It's not our job to critique the design and do that. It's our job to keep the project moving and let those people, the builder and the city, come to terms with what they're going to do. And that's how when I look at something and I vote on it, that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to keep it moving. If there's something that comes out to me and says, this is really wrong, well, sure, I'm going to stop. But if I know there's other regulatory agencies down the road that are going to take care of the problems that people are talking about, then we got to keep it moving. And that's why I voted the way I did, to keep it moving.
So you took my .6. All right, so I don't have to say that anymore, but I agree wholeheartedly with that.
5 others, I take it?
And yeah, well, the fifth one is, I think we have to keep in mind that there is a history here, and back when, thank you for that, by the way. I like the levity. There is a history here, and it is relevant, and at a time when, and I'd say a little bit of this to you, Eddie, at a time when no one else was coming to the table, and I say this to other developers who have approached us and said, what the heck are you doing? There was nobody else that put a valuable proposal together for us. Harcourt came to the table at a time when no one else would, and I think we need to honor that agreement. Just because times have changed does not change our commitment to an agreement that we signed or that we made. And at that juncture, the markets were different, granted, but we made a commitment as a port. And as a port commissioner, I think I have a responsibility to honor the commitment that was made at a time when it was a difficult decision. Secondly, I think we made an agreement and we need to stick to it. That was the second one. Third, we can analyze this thing to death. And I agree with Commissioner Briscoe. The time for analysis is done. Third, Eddie, I think you need to come hang with some of my peeps, because my circle says, you put this thing up, we'll buy it. And they're clamoring for this to begin for a number of reasons. First of all, it's going to create an incredible amount of economic activity. It's going to create the opportunity for more opportunities. It's going to create coffee shops. It's going to create a desire for restaurants. It's going to create an opportunity for excitement and advancement. So I see that as a positive. So I believe the economic activity that this will generate is substantial. And last but not least, I think Harcourt knows what they're doing. Last but not least. I don't think that they're going to do anything that's going to harm this community. I think in the long run, they want to work with us. This is just the beginning of what I expect will be a very, very Bellingham-looking development. So it has my full support. That being said, are you ready for a vote?
We have a reason again?
Please.
Is how we had such a discussion?
A motion to approve Resolution Number 1371, authorizing the sale of real property to Harcourt Bellingham LLC for Project 2, and authorize the Executive Director to execute any and all documents necessary to complete the sale of the 1.733 acres for Project 2.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 None opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Say,
I want to note that Sylvia's not here. She's worked on this for so long, and she's not here to see it move forward. But
She's probably not even watching.
I guess that's part of retirement.
she's
Turned on her YouTube today at 4:30.
I'm sure
and
she's
started-
glued to it right now.
Hey, Sylvia.
So before we get to the to other business, I want to announce the advisory committee meeting schedule. The Marina Advisory Committee is going to meet May 7th at 6 p.m. in the Harbor Center building. The Technical Advisory Committee is meeting Thursday, May 10th in the ARF conference room on Bakerview out by the airport. And then the BIAC meeting, the Bellingham International Airport Advisory Committee is also meeting on Thursday, May 10th at 5 p.m. in the same conference room down at the airport. And with that, any other business? Commissioner Shepherd?
I wanted to see if you guys think it would be useful to have a work meeting periodically. Something we had talked about previously, and it's not, nobody wants to schedule lots more meetings, but possibly something every other month where we had a focused work session. We have to, of course, advertise these and make them public events, but they're less under the glare of the cameras. No discredit to our wonderful camera crew here.
Commissioner, if I can suggest, we used to do something similar. In fact, we set up a table down there that we all sat at and kind of gathered around the table to work. And
Way down there?
Yeah, way down there. So, we talked earlier about maybe one meeting being necessary if the agendas aren't too full. So if I can arrange an agenda where the one meeting has the business items, then we can use the second meeting as a work meeting where we just discuss whatever topics come to mind.
Yeah. It's just something I found really valuable that we were able to squeeze into the legal period when we could meet as a group, and we don't get to do that very often and otherwise. And I think we could easily identify a range of topics, whether it's particular avenues of economic development or something related to the waterfront or something else that we're able to have some more constructive time.
I might throw out there that our executive sessions we can do that there as long as and we have to identify the topics anyway. So, I mean, we can use our executive sessions to do that. We just have to set it up that way, right? Am I correct?
You're correct. You're limited by law as to what you can discuss in executive session, but yeah.
If we all have something we want to discuss and it's stated, then we can talk about that, correct?
So if we wanted to say, discuss some broadband.
Yeah, that's not going to fall under the law for executive session. That's going to have to be a work session type of an item, yeah.
I'm actually in full support of something like that. As somebody who thinks out loud, it's nice to be able to verbalize some things and get the feedback from you two. So I would be in support of that. I don't know that I would make it every other, but I would certainly say once a month or so.
We can call a special session, whatever.
Well, maybe what I can try and do for a test case is cram the May 1st agenda with the business items and try and free up the May, I guess it'd be the 15th meeting to test out a little work study session. And would you want it this format, or would you rather sit down at tables and I mean, what would be your preference there?
Yeah, I'm happy to sit down.
Yeah.
I kind of like this chair.
We can move the chair.
Move our chairs down.
Can we go to
Can I still have
Boundary
my
Bay?
Can I still have my microphone?
Yeah, you could go, as long as you announce where it's going to be, you could go to Boundary Bay. But so why don't, is that okay if we try and do that for
That's
May?
a better idea.
No, I'm good with that.
Yeah, let's try it out.
Yeah, okay, good one.
Anything else?
That's it for me.
Not really, I did touch on some things. When I ran for commissioner, port commissioner, there was a couple of major things that I wanted to achieve while I was here. And the shipping terminal, getting that up and running was one of them, and it's not that I've achieved that. Staff has done most everything, a little push maybe, but bring it to the forefront. But a barge container terminal, a barging facility. And I just want to let the public know that we've not wavered, I've not wavered from that. Director Fix has been assisting me, and we've talked with some of our marine tenants. So we're pushing forward with that behind the scenes. We don't talk about it much here. so you don't see anything. So those folks that are wondering what we're doing, we're trying to figure out where we can get a terminal in on our waterfront to bring containers in for our businesses and tenants in Whatcom County. So we're still trying to move forward that. And the other thing is the ASB pond, and I think we're gonna, Brian, get to that one of these days. So just to let folks know, we haven't dropped the ball on either one of those. It's going on behind the scenes, and when we have some good news and some positive things we can bring forward that we're gonna do something, we'll certainly have it right up front here. And that's all I have.
Nothing from my end. So with that, meeting adjourned.